Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse, and you're watching Disruptive Investing News.
All right, so we got a few stories this week. First is about Subaru, which normally you wouldn't think has anything to do with disruption. But let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, here's one of those stories that I feel bad talking about. Like, you have any of those friends who are like always on the verge of a breakthrough, and they're always telling you that they're like about to move or they're about to get a new job, and then you see them again and they haven't done that. And then sometimes other people will ask you about them, and you don't want to be the unreliable narrator. And also, they like that person, so you don't want to be honest either. You don't want to be like, they say they're going to do this thing, and I know that they won't do that. So you have to act like, oh, I don't know. I haven't heard from them in a while. I feel like this about car companies all the time. I don't want to write overly negative stories about brands that people like, so I try not to report on all the shit that they say that they're going to do, and I just wait to see what they actually do, and I report on that. But here's just one of those things where I feel like I should say something.
But we do make fun of car companies all the time.
Yeah, but we skip so many stories about what these car companies plan to do. Otherwise, every week, it would practically be all we talk about. Here's an example. Subaru. They've done absolutely nothing with EVs other than co-developing the Solterra, which is just the BZ4X with Toyota, which was a complete flop. Now they've announced that they plan to have 4 electric crossover models by 2026 and get to 400,000 EVs by 2028.
That sounds very similar to all car makers.
Right. Now, the numbers don't sound the same, but X number of electric models by 2020 Y and Z 100,000 EVs sold by 2030-ish.
Yeah, and the media takes them at face value.
Right, and I get reporting on it, right? This is what the company claims. But there's never any rebuff, no doubt, no savviness or business acumen, because this sounds extremely similar to me to Tesla Killer 2020.
Right. I mean, back in 2016 to 2019, no matter what, people said, oh, these car companies will catch up to Tesla with Tesla killers, and they're all coming out in 2020.
And where are they? And I mean, I get it, there's new EVs, but now no one wants to talk about Tesla killers because that meme is deader than chocolate rain.
Chocolate rain.
But to me, it's exactly the same as this.
Yeah, overhyped promises from car companies that know they don't have to deliver.
But again, the media loved that Tesla killer hype. And while a Tesla killer headline will absolutely flop today, people are ready to hear about Tesla being just another player in the EV space, right? They're not the leader or anything, but don't worry, Ford, GM, Subaru, they're all gonna be fine.
No, it's a good point. I mean, Ford's number 3 now, GM's number 2. And when basically Tesla is dominating, and while it won't roll off the tongue like Tesla killer, the X number of electric models by 2020 Y and Z 100,000 EVs sold by 2030 are going to be the same joke in 3 years.
I think so. I mean, I just don't see how a company like Subaru, right? They're tiny. How they're going to come out with 4 electric models, unless those 4 electric models are going to be built on pre-existing platforms from other companies, which is exactly what they tried to do before.
Well, I'm going to get to that in a story in a minute about Rivian. We'll see a similar thing. But let's shift now to GM. So as Ford fumbled the ball in Q1 with the Ford F-150 Lightning production, which was halted for months as they tried to solve that battery fire problem. And also they had that scheduled downtime, remember, for the Mach-E factory in Mexico. GM caught up and they produced 20,000 EVs in Q1 in the US, and they overtook Ford into the number 2 spot in US EV sales.
Woohoo! Way to go, GM. Okay, GM, you're in the number 2 spot. Now, what's your next move?
What's that? You're going to go EV only in Europe now? Well. Hat tip, sir.
Yeah, according to Automotive News, GM will begin selling only EVs in Europe starting this fall, starting with the Equinox, right? The Equinox means fall.
Well, yes, the Equinox is the fancy word for fall. And yes, GM will begin selling it here in the US this fall. But no, GM's first EV for Europe starting this fall will be the Cadillac Lyriq, the mid-sized luxury crossover that they only sold 968 of in Q1.
Hey, that's better than the 86 they sold the quarter before, so there's that. But hang on, I'm surprised that GM is making this EV-only move in Europe.
Well, don't forget, GM sold Opel and Vauxhall to PSA. Remember, PSA was bought by Stellantis. They did that back in 2017. They basically abandoned high volume sales in Europe. I mean, Europe is only the second biggest car market in the world, so why be part of that?
Whatever. But what about Corvette? GM still sells that brand in Europe.
Well, how often do you see a Corvette in Europe? It's not a high volume car. And besides, Europe is signaling that they'll be banning ICE car sales by 2035. So GM really had no choice but to pivot to electric. Problem is, they don't have many electrics. The Bolt is being discontinued, and I kind of doubt that the Hummer EV will be a big hit in Europe.
But they do have the Equinox, which should start at just 27,000 euros, and the midsize Chevy Blazer.
Okay, good luck with that, GM. Because, I mean, look, in terms of name brands and model names and stuff, I mean, no one really knows about the Equinox or the Blazer. The Blazer was a moderate success here in the U.S. for a very short time, but it was known as this boxy SUV. Now they're, rebranding it just to use its name. I don't think Europeans are going to flock to it. Do you?
I don't get the sense, but Europeans, let us know what you think of the Equinox and the Chevy Blazer.
And a lot of it, look, I mean, price is great, 27,000 euros,
Sure.
awesome, but it's about stats. It's about, what's the car, how's it drive, what's the range,
And how big is it, and all sorts of stuff.
Exactly. And lastly, let's go to Rivian here. So isn't it funny how the media tries to spin things, just like you talked about in the first story? Case in point here is Rivian's Q1 earnings. Rivian surprises in Q1 earnings with smaller losses and reaffirmed production guidance. Oh, okay. Or how about, let's put it a bit more factually. Rivian produced 9,395 vehicles in Q1, and they only delivered 7,946. Those 7,946 vehicles brought in revenue of $661 million. Good so far?
Rivian's gross profit for the quarter?
Negative $535 million. But hey, that's a smaller number than $502 million, which is what Rivian lost in Q1 of 2022, right? Right? Isn't that what I learned in high school math? A bigger negative number is a smaller number. Oh, but I guess in this case, it's a bigger number. You know what? Let's just put up the numbers. Okay, so here are the numbers. Let's just cut all this headline crap, because I think in about 10 seconds, if you know how to read a financial sheet, you'll be able to see what's actually going on.
Rivian's gross margins are so negative that it's costing Rivian about twice as much to make a vehicle than what they're selling it for.
But hey, Rivian says they expect to reach positive gross profit by the end of 2024. Overall, Rivian posted a net loss of almost $1.4 billion. The runway's getting shorter. After burning through $1.5 billion in this quarter, that leaves Rivian with $11.7 billion in cash left.
But Rivian is still maintaining that they can produce 50,000 vehicles this year.
Look, I'm just so tired of this little game of let's compare how a company did in the quarter to how the analysts thought they'd do. Now, look, if that's entertaining for you when watching sports, then great.
Well, Bob, we thought the Broncos were going to lose by 5 points, but they only lost by 3 points. Good job, Broncos.
But why do it with companies' financials? Oh, right. That's why. Because big media wants to make this entertaining like sports is, so you'll just watch it endlessly on like CNBC. Bottom line, I'd like Rivian to take off before they run out of runway. But each month that goes by, it's looking less and less likely to me. So let us know what you think in the chat below. But here's the thing. They keep saying now that they're going to be able to hit that 50,000 mark. That's what they said they were going to do last year, was 50,000, okay? And that's after they lowered it. So they're so far behind of where they said they would be, but they keep trying to sell you on the good news part of like, we're still going to hit the target, the reduced target. And look, they only sold, 8,000 vehicles in the first quarter. So they still have over 42,000 they have to sell this year. I don't see how there's even enough time to do that. And they're losing money on every sale. I don't know.
And they're hardly delivering the cars that they produce.
Well, I'd understand if they were 3 or 4% negative margin, how they would get to positive by the end of this year. But if they're at such a low margin right now, I've never seen a company turn it around in just a couple quarters. It takes time, and they are taking their sweet time.
Right. And I know that a lot of people are going to want to be like, well, but Zach and Jesse, what about Tesla? What about Tesla, you stupid idiots? Tesla was moving into a completely wide open space, right? EVs. And look, they've taken that space like a lot. They are a huge chunk of the EV market share, right? And it's a product market share that I think is where everyone's going to be moving to, because why would I want to get oil changes? Why would I want to pay so much for gas? Why wouldn't I want to be able to generate my own electricity and put it in my own freaking vehicle, right? All of these things, let alone the quietness, let alone the lower maintenance, let alone the acceleration, all of these wonderful things that EVs can do, Tesla was moving into. Now, Rivian is in, maybe, you could argue, oh, they're in the same boat as Tesla was. Except that now they're going into a sea that's full of Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as Cybertruck comes out, one of their biggest models is going to have Uber
competition.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just, I wish I had a better feeling about Rivian.
Yeah.
But at every turn, it's little things too. It's like, oh, the camp kitchen, it's going to be great, and it's going to cost $6,000. And then like, oh, we can't deliver a camp kitchen for $6,000. When I could build you a fully functional kitchen in a house for $6,000.
To me, they were just really well funded. I mean, a lot of startup EV companies just didn't have as much money as they have, so they didn't have as much runway. But Rivian is just burning it so fast. It's almost the equivalent of a small startup, because they're not really getting to profitability. And you can say it all you want, but show us how you're going to do it.
Exactly.
Anyway, thanks for watching so much. If you have ideas for stories that you'd like us to run, please comment down below and let us know. We're here every week with Disruptive Investing News, and you can also watch our show every week if you don't know about it already, Tesla Time News every Tuesday. So go join us over there, where you're going to learn all about all sorts of EV news. And you can join us on Patreon if you want to support us. We have Patreon bonus stories for just $1 a month.
We also have the Patreon Investor Club bonus stories, which I think you might be more interested in if you're an investor. And that's at the $10 level a month. But it also comes with a lot of other cool perks, including a Slack with a bunch of intelligent people on it that are talking about green investing.
Yeah, we don't talk about that much, but it's a huge, huge benefit. Anyway, we'll see you guys next week
on Disruptive Investing.